What comes to mind when you hear the word recess? Maybe it jogs memories of heightened physical activity on school playgrounds for children, but today I want to talk about a different group's recess, the Supreme Court. We'll take a look at some of the momentous cases coming out of this term and a few books that we can read, you and me, to better understand these issues. And I want to do a content warning here. We'll be talking a lot about gun violence in this video, and while I hope that you stick around for all of it, if that's too unsettling, I'll leave a timestamp on screen when we get closer for you to skip that part and catch up with us later. Let's get into it. First, let's just quickly talk about some of the basics, especially since not everyone watching lives in America. The Supreme Court of the United States, sometimes referred to as SCOTUS, is our highest court within the hierarchy of courts. Not all countries' apex courts are called Supreme Courts. For example, in Australia and Eritrea, there's the High Court, but we're referring to the same thing here. SCOTUS's main role is to uphold the law and the Constitution, a document written in 1787 when basically literally no one other than white men had civil rights. A term of the Supreme Court starts on the first Monday in October and continues through June or early July of the following year. After that, they're in summer recess where, and this is according to their website, they continue to analyze new petitions for review, consider motions and applications, and must make preparations for cases scheduled for fall argument. What we've seen happening in the past is justices will teach law courses at universities or give keynote speaker addresses, so there's a bit of a discrepancy there. The justices fall into one of two blocks, having either liberal or conservative philosophies of law and of judicial interpretation. That said, a growing body of academic research has confirmed that the justices' votes are a reflection of their political philosophies, as well as their ideological leanings, personal attitudes, values, or policy preferences. The court currently has a 6-3 conservative majority, and when the October term starts up, we'll see an all-female liberal bloc with Ketanji Brown Jackson, who is SCOTUS's first black female justice, coming in to replace the now retired Stephen Breyer. Moving on to the major decisions in 2022, there are two big ones that I really want to talk about here: the Second Agreement and abortion rights. Honestly, both of these decisions are unsettling, though not surprising given the distribution of the judges. On June 23rd, in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin, the court ruled 6-3 that states with strict limits on carrying guns in public violate the Second Amendment, which protects the right to keep and bear arms. Basically, this case involves a 109-year-old New York state law that requires people who want to carry a handgun in public, openly or concealed, to demonstrate proper cause before they can even obtain a license to do so. They also need to show a special need for self-protection that's distinguishable from that of the general public. There are 5 other states plus DC that have similar laws, which together make up about a quarter of the US population. So given the US's history with gun violence and mass shootings, which as of recording this video on July 20th, there have been 356. You can see how this ruling has massive implications on huge swaths of American gun laws. 2 books that I'd like to talk about here are From a Taller Tower and Another Day in the Death of America. From a Taller Tower, The Rise of the American Mass Shooter is a book by Seamus McGraw. In 1966, after murdering both his wife and his mother, an ex-Marine and student climbed a tower at the University of Texas and opened fire. In the end, he killed 17 people, and at the time, that was the deadliest mass shooting in America. Today, it's the 10th. From a Taller Tower traces the history of the American mass shooter at Columbine, Sandy Hook, Christchurch, Parkland, and more. The author is scrupulous, with just a couple of exceptions about not naming names, denying killers the publicity that they crave. This book explores the beliefs that many Americans hold about guns, examines the connections that people draw between mass shooters and mental illness, and confronts the circumstances that allow these catastrophes to continue, like the ease of acquiring a gun to begin with, which, as we already covered, just got easier. Another Day in the Death of America, a chronicle of 10 short lives, was written by Gary Young. This book documents the lives and deaths of 10 boys ages 9 to 19 killed by guns. One accidentally shot by his best friend during a sleepover, one in a case of mistaken identity while he was walking to his mother's apartment, and another, a 9-year-old nicknamed Smiley, murdered by his mom's ex-boyfriend. And if that's not fucked up enough, they all died over the course of a single day, November 23rd, 2013. The author randomly chose this date, and this reflects the troubling statistics of American life. That's not to say that Young reduces these children down to data points. He uses research, interviews with family members, and reports of gun violence around the country to explain the circumstances that led to their deaths. All right, the next case feels like a good one to end on because even though its decision is equally as grim, there are resources and actionable steps that we can take, but we'll talk about that in a bit. One day after the Second Amendment ruling was made, and I cannot make this shit up, literally the next day, in Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization, the court ruled 6-3 that a Mississippi law that bans abortions after 15 weeks is constitutional. This overruled Roe v. Wade, which has come to be known as the landmark case that legalized abortion nationwide. So now what this means is that it's up to states to decide their own abortion laws, and the rights of people with uteruses depends heavily on which direction those state lawmakers lean. As of today, abortion is banned in these states, and bans and restrictions are expected soon in about a dozen others. There are 2 books to look at here, and I think, despite my implicit stance on this matter, it's important that we take a look at both sides of the debate. We Organize to Change Everything and Defenders of the Unborn are the books that we'll chat about today. We Organize to Change Everything, Fighting for Abortion Access and Reproductive Justice is a collaboration between the socialist feminist magazine Lux and Verso, the largest independent radical publishing house in the English-speaking world. The book examines the fight for abortion from the 1970s to the present, combining the voices of clinic defenders, healthcare providers, and activists helping pregnant people obtain care. It also considers the connection of abortion rights to forced sterilization and structural racism, incarceration and criminalization, indigenous people's sovereignty, and transgender rights. This collection of essays describe what a fighting movement for reproductive justice could look like and rejects the criminalization of anyone's body. This book is being offered as a free download from Verso, so I'll leave a link to that and everything else that we're discussing today down in the description box. The last book is Defenders of the Unborn, the pro-life movement before Roe v. Wade by Daniel K. Williams. This book details the hidden history of the pro-life movement in America and presents those who led the fight against Roe as they saw themselves, bound less by politics or religion than by values. It states that the kinds of people that attended pro-life rallies varied from white Protestant physicians to young mothers to Black Democratic legislators to even the occasional member of Planned Parenthood. Williams explains how New Deal-era liberals forged alliances with activists, both Republican and Democrat, to fight for what they saw as a human rights cause. I'm curious to dig into this one because I've not researched at all into the history of the pro-life movement, and I enjoy reading books from perspectives that I don't necessarily align with in an effort to broaden my understandings of the world and people around me. The author is credited with being pretty objective in his reporting, and overall, the book is a reminder that abortion is a fraught subject for good reason. If this is an issue that you, like me, feel compelled to fight for, there's a lot that can be done here. I'll drop a link to a Twitter thread from Sherilyn Eiffel that details a whole long list of actionable steps that we can take in the description box. All right, that's just the big stuff. We didn't even have time to get into any of the other meaty SCOTUS cases like separation of church and state, prayer now being allowed in public schools, crimes against Native Americans, climate change, or immigration. The upcoming October term will have a number of notable cases to look out for, especially with Clarence Thomas wanting SCOTUS to overturn the landmark rulings that legalize contraception and same-sex marriage. Also, let's remember that 3 Supreme Court justices were placed on the bench by a twice impeached president who didn't even win the popular vote and who led an insurrection. Our democracy is crumbling before us. How much longer will you wait to fight?